Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Çelen Dimililer. I'm a lecturer at the English Language and Literature Department of the nearest university. This webinar will be about a very influential writer of the 20th century, Virginia Woolf, with respect. First of all, I'm going to give some details of her autobiography, and then I will go over the autobiographical elements inherent in Mrs. Dalloway, the most very well-known novel of Virginia Woolf. Adeline Virginia Woolf was born on 20th January 1882 in London. As a young girl, Virginia was curious, light-hearted, and playful. She was grown up into an intellectual family. Her father was a historian and an author, and her mother was a nurse and wrote a book on the profession. Both of her parents had been married and widowed before marrying each other. Woolf had 3 full siblings and 4 half siblings. The 8 children lived under one roof in London. Early traumas darkened Woolf's childhood. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Çelen Dimililer. I'm a lecturer at the English Language and Literature Department of the nearest university. This webinar will be about a very influential writer of the 20th century, Virginia Woolf, with respect. First of all, I'm going to give you some details about her autobiography, and then I will go over the autobiographical elements inherent in Mrs. Dalloway, the most well-known novel of Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf, Adeline Virginia Woolf, was born in 1882 in London. As a young girl, she was curious, light-hearted, and playful. She has grown up into an intellectual family. Her father was a historian and an author, and her mother was a nurse and wrote a book on the profession. Both of her parents had been married and widowed before marrying each other. So Woolf had 3 full siblings and 4 half siblings. The 8 children lived under one roof in London. Early traumas darkened Woolf's childhood, including being sexually abused by her half-brothers, George and Gerald, for 9 years. In 1985, at the age of 13, she also had to cope with the sudden death of her mother from fever, which led to her first mental breakdown. 2 years later, she had lost her half-sister Stella, who had become the head of the household. And in 1904, her father died from stomach cancer, which contributed to another emotional setback that led to Woolf being institutionalized. A year later, Woolf's 26-year-old brother also died from fever. Mental illness was often boldly defined and misdiagnosed throughout the 20th century. Virginia was misdiagnosed at an early age. With a vogue analysis of her mental instability, Virginia had a difficult time coping with her situation. She constantly lived in fear of her next mental breakdown. It later became understood that Virginia Woolf was manic depressive throughout most of her life. It's actually called bipolar disorder. They have similar symptoms. This is your normal mood, and when you suffer from bipolar disorder, your mood can go and come between periods of mania and periods of depression, two extremes. It's a mood disorder, mood swings, and suicidal thoughts occur when you have depression. Virginia Woolf's parents also suffered from mental disorders. Her father was what at the time called cyclothymic. It's here. It's again has got to do with mood swings. It's a mood disorder, but it's milder. Whereas her mother suffered from depression. Both Vanessa and Adrian appear to have been cyclothymic as well, and Toby was known to have hypomanic episodes. Hypomania is here. Hence, Virginia's bipolar disorder symptoms appear to be strongly linked to her family background. Virginia's biological inheritance translated into great risk of developing mental illness. Nevertheless, it could be argued that her disease would have been milder had she not been exposed to childhood traumatic experiences. She also experienced World War I and II, where the bombs shook her windows. Her final residence, her final home, was bombed, destroyed during the London Blitz in London. The Blitz was a German bombing campaign against the United Kingdom in 1940. And there is a direct quotation taken from one of her diaries. She says, "Oh, I try to imagine how one is killed by a bomb." As the war raged on, Virginia and her husband Leonard Woolf made a suicide pact. They stored an extra can of gasoline in their garage and planned to kill themselves with exhaust fumes if Germany invaded, according to Virginia Woolf's diary. "We discussed suicide if Hitler lands, Jews beaten up." This quotation is taken from her diary as well. Leonard's youngest brother, Cecil, was also killed in the war. Virginia suffered through 3 major mental breakdowns during her lifetime, and she died during her 4th. Her first breakdown occurred shortly following the death of her mother in 1895, which Virginia later described as the greatest disaster that could have happened. She fell sick soon after Stella's death, and in 1904 her father died. She suffered her second mental breakdown combined with scarlet fever and an attempted suicide. She fell ill more frequently as she grew older, often taking respite in rest homes and in care of her husband. She had been advised by doctors not to become pregnant after her third serious breakdown in 1930. Virginia married a writer, a social reformer, Leonard Woolf. You can see in the picture, that's him, in 1912. She was not physically attracted or in love with her husband. It was a partnership of minds and mutual respect. Her husband dedicated much of his life to studying his wife Virginia. As a husband, he wanted to do all he could to avoid instabilizing her mental state. He soon figured out that while Virginia was writing a novel, she was sane. However, soon after her novel was complete, she became depressed. According to Rosebone, he had recognized her genius before their marriage, but not the extent of her mental instability. For nearly 30 years, one of Leonard's chief occupations was caring for Virginia. Without his vigilant love, her books would never have been written. He was her first reader, her editor, and her publisher. Though not a sexually active marriage, theirs was one of profound and enduring affection. On March 28, 1941, Virginia Woolf committed suicide. Putting on her heavy fur coat in preparation for her walk to the River Oust, she loaded her pockets up with heavy stones, waded into the earth-green water, and she died quietly, but probably not gently, as her body struggled and then surrendered. Her body wasn't discovered until April the 18th and was identified by her husband, Leonard, on the same day. Woolf had a suicide letter to her husband, Leonard. This is the suicide letter. It's her handwriting. Let's listen to it.
Dearest, I feel certain that I'm going mad again. I feel we can't go through another of those terrible times. And I shan't recover this time. I begin to hear voices, and I can't concentrate. So I am doing what seems the best thing to do. You have given me the greatest possible happiness. You have been, in every way, all that anyone could be. I don't think two people could have been happier till this terrible disease came. I can't fight any longer. I know that I am spoiling your life, that without me you could work. And you will, I know. You see, I can't even write this properly. I can't read. What I want to say is, I owe all the happiness of my life to you. You have been entirely patient with me and incredibly good. I want to say that. Everybody knows it. If anybody could have saved me, it would have been you. Everything has gone from me, but the certainty of your goodness. I can't go on spoiling your life any longer. I don't think two people could have been happier than we have been. Me.
Let's move on to Mrs. Dalloway. Reading Mrs. Dalloway creates a sense in which the reader can have experience to live in a bipolar brain. Mrs. Dalloway shortly covers one day from morning to night in one woman's life, Clarissa Dalloway. She's the protagonist of the novel. An upper-class housewife walks through her London neighborhood to prepare for the party she will host that evening. She is in a flower shop. The point of view then shifts to Septimus, a veteran of World War I who was injured in warfare and now suffers from shell shock. Septimus and his Italian wife Lucrezia pass time in Regent's Park. They are waiting for Septimus's appointment with a psychiatrist. Before the war, Septimus was a young poet and the lover of Shakespeare. When the war broke out, he enlisted immediately for romantic patriotic reasons. He became numb. He stopped feeling. He couldn't feel anything to the horrors of war and its aftermath. His friend Evans died in the war in front of him. Now Septimus sees nothing of worth in the England he fought for, and he has lost the desire to preserve either his society or himself. Clearly, Septimus's experiences in the war have permanently scarred him, and he has serious mental problems. However, Sir William doesn't listen to what Septimus says and diagnoses a lack of proportion. Sir William plans to separate Septimus from Lucrezia and sends him to a mental institution in the country. Septimus and Lucrezia are in their apartment enjoying a moment of happiness together before the man comes to take Septimus. One of Septimus's doctors, Dr. Holmes, arrives, and Septimus fears the doctor will destroy his soul. In order to avoid this fate, he jumps from a window to his death. Suicidal side of Virginia is clearly represented in Septimus here, and there is a film adaptation of the novel Mrs. Dalloway as well. This picture is taken from it. This is Septimus. Woolf shows her experiences of her contemporary society in this novel and portrays a society in which there is lack of proper understanding towards the concept of mental illness. We have Septimus's ill treatment as an example. In reality, Woolf tried to jump out of a window in London, and Septimus Warren Smith experiences it in a depressive state by jumping from an open window to his death. This quotation is also taken from one of Virginia Woolf's diaries. It says, "I am in the mood to dissolve in the sky." During her illness, Woolf experienced the periods of madness in which she was hearing voices such as the voice of her mother, who was not alive, or the birds outside her window were talking in Greek. Septimus also hears the song of birds in Greek, and he thinks the birds communicate a divine message for him, as well as he sees his friend Evans, who was killed in the war, and heard the voices of dead people and saw those who were not in real world and were just in his hallucination. They were both hallucinating and seeing dead people. Karamagnos says that Wolff's various doctors failed because until 1904, no one had even been able to catalogue the often bewildering arrays of symptoms which in many ways seem to mimic those of neurosis. The old family doctor George diagnosed her illness as neurasthenia, nerve weakness. Dr. George, the old family doctor, prescribed the method of treatment with respite using the nutritious foods and raising weight for her. They believed that even the biological reasons can be the main cause of her breakdown. He defined her illness as nerve weakness, not an important illness. And Wolff shows that Septimus's doctors advised the same methods in the process of his treatment. We have a quotation taken from the book, a long one. Let's listen to it.
Dr. Holmes examined him. There was nothing whatever the matter, said Dr. Holmes. When he felt like that, he went to the music hall, said Dr. Holmes. He took a day off with his wife and played golf. Why not try 2 tabloids of bromide dissolved in a glass of water at bedtime? Headaches, sleeplessness, fears, dreams, nerve symptoms, and nothing more, he said. If Dr. Holmes found himself even half a pound below 11 stone 6, he asked his wife for another plate of porridge at breakfast. Razia would learn to cook porridge, but he continued, health is largely a matter in our own control. Throw yourself into outside interests. Take up some hobby. Wolff, 1964.
Wolff reflected her mistreatment by showing that Septimus's doctors were also unable in the treatment of his illness. These 2 pictures are taken from the film adaptation of the novel. This is Septimus. The picture on the left was taken just before he went to war, and the picture on the right is taken when he is back from the war. I've edited some parts from the movie. Let's watch it together. This is Septimus in the war. He's trying to warn his friend Evans. Flower shop.
To the table, it will
This
be
is Mrs. Galloway. As you can see, Septimus is still under the influence of war.
Those awful motor cars.
They're in a park with his wife. Here he hears the birds singing, talking in Greek.
Look, Septimus.
There's no crime. There's no death. The birth is in Greek.
He is disturbed. He hallucinates. He now sees his friend Evans.
Evans! For God's sake, don't come. I went under the sea. I have been dead. Now I'm alive.
They have an appointment with a doctor, but he doesn't want to see any doctors anymore because they failed in helping him.
Septimus, I know to last some of the time. I think we have to go now.
It's not to go. Not to hide.
Septimus, you know we are going to see a doctor who will help you.
No more doctors! No more lies!
Septimus, please.
No more doctors. They couldn't help him. He sees his friend Evans again.
Evans! For God's sake, don't come!
Has done nothing wrong with him.
Now they
What
are
did Dr. Holmes advise you?
in another psychiatrist's
My wife
office.
said she made me porridge. Headaches, dreams, fears are just nerves.
They're just
Health
nerves.
is largely a matter of our own control. I should take up some sin, which human nature has condemned me to death. I cannot feel. I did not care when Evans was killed.
We have been arranging that you should go into a home.
One of Holmes's homes.
One of my homes, Mr. Wondersmith. And now we will teach you to rest and to regain a sense of proportion.
They're going to send him to a mental hospital. They're going to separate them, Septimus and his wife. Both Wolf and Septimus, they were thinking about death excessively. Think and talk about death, actually. Dr. Holmes arrived.
If he comes, I won't let him come in here.
Virginia Woolf also tried to jump out of a window in the family's home in London. So we have another autobiographical element here.
I beg you.
Mr. Warren Smith. You want my life? I'll give it to you.
He committed suicide. He jumped from an open window to his death. Virginia Woolf also committed suicide. She drowned herself in a river. On the other hand, manics cannot be able to control the stream of their thoughts. And as Karamagno says, Woolf in hypomanic felt energized and creative, and fiction came easily to her. Actually, writing and manic depressive illness have got close affinity as much as manic depressive illness periodically destroyed control of the racing mind. On the other hand, in the process of writing, the only thing that matters is a thing that you cannot control. Karamagno also quotes from Woolf that my body was flooded with rapture and my brain with ideas. I wrote rapidly until 12. Woolf used her illness in practical ways. In fact, her unique style of writing, which is known as the stream of consciousness technique, can be considered as the symptoms she experienced through her illness. She applied those experiences that she achieved through her mood disorders. In fact, Woolf tried to express the nature of her illness in her writings. The phrase stream of consciousness was first used in 1890 by William James in Principles of Psychology. He writes, "It's nothing joined, it flows, a river or a stream is the metaphors by which it's most naturally described. In talking of it hereafter, let's call it the stream of thought, consciousness, or subjective life." The reader is acutely informed of the relationship between Clarissa and her husband, Richard. He orders everything around Clarissa, like Leonard, Woolf's husband. Woolf's daughters advise Leonard to limit her activities, visitors, and to control her eating, sleeping, and asking her not to be tired mentally and physically when she was ill. Richard insists that Clarissa needs a peaceful place and has to sleep alone in a separate room. She points to her attic room that is like a nun's room, and her bed that is narrow, and also she feels that she still has her virginity despite being a woman. Here, Woolf shows that Richard keeps the same orders about Clarissa like Leonard did to Woolf. Here we have got another long quotation taken from Woolf. Let's listen to it.
The sheets were clean, tight stretched in a broad white band from side to side. Narrower and narrower would her bed be. Richard insisted after her illness that she must sleep undisturbed. So the room was an attic, the bed narrow, and lying there reading, for she slept badly, she could not dispel virginity preserved through childbirth, which clung to her like a sheet. Through some contraction of this cold spirit, she had failed him. She resented it, yet she could not resent sometimes yielding to the charm of a woman, not a girl, of a woman. And whether it was a pity or their beauty, or that she was older or some accident, like a faint scent or a violin next door, she did undoubtedly then feel what men felt. But this question of love, this falling in love with women.
This is Virginia Woolf and her lover, Vita Sackville West. In fact, her descriptions reveal a significant view of her married relationship. She felt that she brought failure to her husband because she could not reply his sensations. In real life as well, Woolf, despite her indifference towards men, Clarissa describes her attraction towards women, exactly like what men can feel about women. The novel Mrs. Dalloway touches on many aspects of sexuality and represents Woolf's materialist feminist side in a repressed social position, as well as her being bisexual. This bisexual experimentation can be seen between Clarissa and Sally in the novel, and Elizabeth and Miss Kilman. Throughout their long marriage, Virginia had other relationships, primarily with women. Woolf had an affair most famously with a woman named Vita Sackville West during the 1920s. This is her and Virginia Woolf. This is where she got inspired to write her novel Orlando, another autobiographical novel of hers. It was written in reference to her loving friend, Vita Sackville West. This is the cover page of the book. My next webinar can be about Orlando, where the protagonist is a poet who switches between genders and lives for 300 years. Different sex, same person, a hero who becomes a heroine. It's a key text in gender studies. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. These are my references. Thank you for listening. Have a happy and healthy day. Yayınımız burada sona ermiştir.